So we're going to look now at how metadata builds a screen in practice. I'm going to walk you through how metadata works. And to do that, I'm going to link to an external data table and show you how definitions build up to provide a full interface. Now, here you can see a screenshot from a database manager, and if you look, you can see that I've got a database called Panoply Tech, and this is a very simple demo database that I use for a lot of my training classes. And so let me go into my real system and run up here, and you can see that I've got my Panoply Tech database here. Now, inside CRM, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch across into where I've got administration, just going into advanced customization. So you can see I'm inside CRM. I'm logged on as a system administrator, and I'm going to look at tables and databases. I'm going to create a new database connection. Now, my server here, if I was to think about a new connection, you can see that my server here is my machine name, and I can drop that in here. And I can connect to a Microsoft SQL Server. I could actually be connecting through to an ODBC database. Okay, so you can see that we're looking at the SQL Server. Here it could be another database. It could be typically ODBC. ODBC database sources are very often used when we are connecting through to databases in older implementations of BMS and accounting systems like that may use Pervasive or may use Providex. But here you can see that what I'm going to do is just type in the name of the database, in which case it's Panoply Tech, and my database description is again Panoply Tech. And it doesn't have to be the username as system administrator username and password, but that's what I'm using here. It just needs to be somebody who has that rights, that user has rights over the database. So I've logged on, I've created here a connection through to the database. Now, in terms of metadata, as I look inside my CRM database and go and have a look at the metadata of what's going on in here, I have a look at the databases, we can see that I now have a connection through to my Panoply Tech database defined here. So I know that this is a connection that Sage CRM knows all about. I can create now a new table connection through to the table contacts inside here, and I can say that this comes from the Panoply Tech database, and I can put in the ID field if I want to as well, and I can choose save. Now, what this has provided is that it's gone in and created a connection inside the system. Select through from custom underscore tables, and I look down into the last table that was created. We can now see our definition is contained here. So I've got my table all defined, and I can now move to customization, where the custom table contacts will be listed as a secondary entity. Now, I've got the connection that theoretically allows me to carry out full CRUD action with that other database. I can next choose to review the fields that I've got in here. And what I'll do is I'll just change my company name to read company name. Confirm it as a text field, choose save, and I'll change my contact name as well to contact name, and I'll choose save. And you can see that these are marked as being particular types of fields, but I can be a little bit more adventurous with this, something like country, inside the nature of the database. If I was to have a look at the database Panoply Tech and say select star from contacts, we can see that in the nature of the information here in the country codes, it's following the two-letter standard abbreviation for a country, and I could use here a selection list because I happen to know that there's an existing set of metadata defined for listing out country codes. So I can this country and I can choose save, and now that will make use of the fact that I've defined it as a selection list with a country code. Now, when I'm working with Sage CRM, I know that there are certain hyperlinks that I can click on that will trigger the email behavior, and I can do the same with an email address, and I can change this to being an email address, recognizing it as an email address, and I can change the caption as well. Now, what that will do is that will trigger the ability to open up the internal emailer client when that address is clicked. And there are other things that we could do here, like I could add in behaviors associated with the web page, etc. But you can see here that I've marked different field types as being this. We know that, for example, the country is really holding ME, not MX, rather than Mexico. But we'll see what this does in terms of the translations. If I now step on and say, well, what I want to do is to use this in a little bit more sophisticated way. But that information is metadata, and it's held inside the metadata table custom edits, and we can see right down the bottom in my database table how I've now started to add in custom edit information with each of these different types of fields being defined, and you can see that there's a whole lot of information tied to it in terms of relationships with other bits of metadata, including here you can see a lookup family with the idea that that's a link through to translations. So these fields that have been described here inside the custom edits table have also a corresponding record inside the custom captions table as well, which is the table responsible for holding the metadata definitions for labels and translations of any things within inside the system. So this is essentially caption information. So that's our information defined, and if I go on now, I can go in to look at lists and create a new list. My list here is going to be, I'll call it Panoply Contacts List, and it comes from contacts, and I will use all of the SQL columns within the underlying query, and I'll choose Save. I just need to include the fields that I want to use, and here I'm going to have my company name. I can add that in, and you can see that I can describe how this list is brought in. I can allow for order by, for example, in the way that I work. I can now add in my contact name. I can add in the email address, and I can add in the country as well. So I've added just 4 items in here. I could link off to other screens if I have built those, and you can see in the metadata it's where we can link to other system actions, plus we can link out to other customization areas. So this would be to a custom.net link. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to have it linked to anything at all. I'm just going to choose Save, and what I've done is I've there built a very simple list. That list that I've got here, I could call from a system menu. And I'm going to go to the advanced customization area and click on system menus to look at just the user menu. Now these system menus, you have to know the names, but they're relatively easy to be able to learn which menu is used in which context. So the user menu is the My CRM menu, and I can start to add in a link to my block or screen that I've built. Now the customization technique that I'm using is more commonly used when editing and building mobile screens. There are lessons coming up which will develop this idea into mobile customization as well, but for now just accept the idea that I'm creating here a caption in my menu called Panoply Contacts List, invoking directly the contacts list behavior. So I'm going to add that in, and then I'm going to choose Save. Now the point is that I want to try and explain that I have made a connection through to an external database which has been done entirely in metadata without any code. So now when I look in the My CRM menu, I can see the Panoply contacts list, I can call that list, and we can see how this list is displayed. But here you can see that if I was to click on an email address, the behavior of the field as we defined it has been inherited, and you can see that it's calling the email feature inside the CRM. So if I cancel that and return back to the My CRM menus, we can now think about what else we've seen. We saw that we went in and worked with a database table within an external database. And we went through the process of defining this within the advanced customization area, adding in a new table connection, adding in then a new, after a new database connection, a new table connection, and then we were able to see all of this described inside metadata. The external database table connection, the custom databases and the custom tables, very important to understand. We're likely to see this in any customizations and the extensions of Sage CRM. So the custom databases table manages all of the connections to the remote databases, passwords are encrypted, and all database connections are opened when CRM is logged onto for the first time. When we look at the information here for the metadata, if I was to go into the custom table again, this is going into tables. Look at that, you can see that there's a board table ID with the different captions. This will come up, and you need to have an awareness of that because it comes up in a number of different places whenever you're trying to support somebody with mismatched data or links sometimes within metadata if things aren't tied up neatly. For example, that board table ID is used within workflow definitions, and it's also used within, for example, linking notes to structures as well. So you can see that if I just do a select star from notes, and you look in here, you'll see that there is this idea of the foreign table ID and which table does it belong to. So you've got the foreign ID and the foreign table ID, and these are all tied to the idea that these are all part of the IDs of which table is involved in that link. Okay, so we went in, we saw that our contacts, once we have got the description in place, form part of our secondary entities within inside the system. We can customize fields in any way that we like. When we customize the fields, those are going to update the information in the custom edits table and also within side tables like custom captions as well. So those are all reflected inside system. And the custom edits table is so important to understand because a lot of problems may occur within the interface if there is a mismatched entry type or people aren't able to enter certain information to the screen. It may be down to something as banal as the entry size. You can even control whether or not individual fields are visible or not. So there are properties like culp_system which can suppress fields as to being available to see or select or to use, or even other properties to allow us to then decide whether or not a field should be able to be removed from the system as well. So custom_ edits, and you can see that a lot of these are self-explanatory as to what they are. You can see whether you've got any editing inside, whether it's a system field, and you can see whether or not there are other restrictions within this field type. Certain fields within here, for example, only become applicable depending on the entry type that has been built. Okay, now I went on and I built a list and I included fields, and then I was able to invoke that list from the system menu within inside the advanced customization area until I was able to bring that into the interface, as you can see here. Well, the option is displaying the information that we need, and I've only displayed that in read-only mode, but theoretically you could do full CRUD tasks. But what I wanted to prove, and I've shown you, is that we can add here a metadata description of an external table, an external database, then an external table, the way in which individual fields should display and behave, then created a list definition, and then I called that list from the main interface. No code has been involved. This is all down to metadata being used to tell Sage CRM what needs to be done.